So slavery historically was never about race. Coming right up. What's up, y'all? Welcome back to Common Sense, Logic, and Reason. And as always, I want to say thank y'all for joining me today. So when it comes down to slavery, I would say many FBAs have misguided notions. I mean, they're completely ignorant of the reality of the history of slavery. Most FBAs in America, I believe, still believe that slavery was an institution of white people enslaving blacks in America. And I know for a long time, I believed that until I learned the truth. You know, they complain about, you know, the white man only tells us white man history. Well, the white man will certainly tell us in America and teach us that slavery existed in America. Now, the problem with that is that slavery existed everywhere. I mean, slavery has been on the planet since human beings have been here. And if you going to tell me that, you know, something that blacks always do, that we are the original man and we were out on ships and oceans, we were charting the oceans when white folks were in diapers and white folks were in caves or whatever, which is not true. But if you believe that blacks are the original man, then you have to believe that black people are the originators of everything, including slavery. As that old saying goes, there's nothing new under the sun. So you cannot tell me that blacks are the original man, but blacks aren't the originators of slavery, and that black folks weren't out here. You know, they say that black people were on charting ships long before Christmas, charting the world on ships long before Christopher Columbus. Well, if that was the case, then black folks were out here also interacting with other races of people and probably conquering them and taking them as slaves. But like I said, slavery, there's not one race or group that wasn't both victim of it and guilty of slaving someone else. So slavery existed long before America. I mean, you can't tell me that you believe that America was the only place that slavery existed. Again, many FBAs believe this. And how I know this is because, like I say, I used to believe this. I used to believe that slaves only existed, slavery as an institution were of white people enslaving blacks from Africa in America. I didn't know anything better. I had no idea, you know, of that in the transatlantic slave trade, slaves went to Central America as well as the majority went to South America. I had no idea of this because, again, this is not something that we're taught in school. And here in America, the history that we taught is basically mostly American based, which would be the same case in most countries, you know. And if this country have a rich history, then their history is going to be based, what history that they teach in schools is going to be largely based off of their own country. So in you know, school, high school, going up from elementary to middle school, junior high, high school, we're essentially taught mostly American history, and we're not really taught about, unless you go into some specialized classes, we're never taught about all the history of the world. And this is why so many blacks or FBAs in America are so misguided or so misinformed when it comes down to slavery. And this is why they believe that slavery as an institution existed of only blacks being slaves in America. And again, like I say, it's my journey. I've learned so much more about slavery than I was ever taught in school. And like I said, slavery was everywhere. It was, you know, more blacks were enslaved in the Arabic slave trade than the transatlantic slave trade. So, like I said, slavery was everywhere. It was never an institution about race. So what was it about? Well, easy victims. Historically speaking, slavery was all about easy victims. And who are the easiest victims? You know, if I have a group of men and we want to go raid some other place and take their resources and take their women, kill the men and take the women, Well, if I have 50 men with me, and I'm the leader of 50 men, and we're going out and we decide we're going to raid some other place for their people, am I going to go into, and there's an encampment, a settlement of 50 people, men and women and children, or am I going to go raid an encampment of 500 people? Well, I'm going to go after the 50 people because, well, it's a lot easier. I stand a lot of chance we fare against a encampment of 50 people, in which you're more likely maybe 20 men. So me and my 50 men, it's a lot easier for us to go take down 20 men than us to go into an encampment of 50 people, some of the town of 50 people, 500 people, and most likely we'll be going up against 200 men. So the easiest victims were us to go after the people who in a settlement of 50. And so this is what people have done all throughout history. If I'm on the slave ship charting the ocean and I'm looking for people to go inland and raid, am I going to raid a village that's maybe a mile or two within inland, or am I going to raid a village that's 200 miles inland? Well, obviously I'm going to go after the village that's close to the ocean, because that means it's easy for me to get to them, and it's easy for them to bring them to my ships. And all the stuff that I take from them, the goods, the gold, the precious metal, every valuable thing I take from them is easier to bring to my ship if it's just 2 miles away than if it's 200 miles. So slavery was always about easiest victims that we can find. So then somebody will ask the question, the FBA will ask, well, wait a minute, why is it that black people were enslaved in America? And the translated slave trade was basically blacks being taken from Africa. Isn't that about race? No. The reason why people were taking slaves from Africa is because Africans were willing to sell the slaves. I mean, think about it. As towns, the encampments turned to towns, towns turned to the cities, cities started to turn into provinces, provinces started turning to nations, and people started becoming larger and groups of nations. It became more and more increasingly difficult to go raid people and to take them as slaves without also facing retribution from that country. If, say, 400 years ago, somebody tried to raid France and take French citizens as slaves, well, they can expect to get a response from France. So I can go try to fight some other place and raid them and take their people, risking a war with that country. Or I can just go to Africa and buy the slaves, because Africans are willing to sell them. And this is why later on in human history, we start to see blacks become more and more enslaved, because it was just so much easier to go to Africa to buy the slaves than go to war with some other country to take them as slaves. So again, it still was all about easy victims. It wasn't about race. If some Asian country or Oriental country was willing to sell their people as slaves, I guarantee you, people would have been buying slaves from them. But as I said, slavery as an institution, historically speaking, even in America, it was never about race. It was always about who's the easiest victims and who's the easiest targets, who's the easiest people that I can raid. Am I going to raid the strong, or am I going to raid the weak who are easy? And we see the same thing in animal kingdom. It's a lion. If I'm a lion, am I going to try to take down a fully grown water buffalo, or am I going to, that's probably 1,500 pounds, 1,200 pound fully grown water buffalo, and I'm 500 pounds, or am I going to take down maybe a 250 pound calf? Again, it was slavery as an institution was never about racism, was never about being against black people. It was always about the easiest victims. Again, this is my 2 cents. It's just a history lesson, and it's a fact. It's the truth. Blacks will get upset and probably argue this, but I'm sorry. The facts don't care about your feelings. Truth does not care about anyone's feelings. So Anyone out there who believed that slavery was an issue of racism or the white man being racist against black people, well, now you know, and knowing it's half the battle. And as always, 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 y'all, until next time.